Okay, so I'm going to give you a rundown on how to make milk chocolate. A lot like I did on the dark chocolate recipe, this is mostly a springboard to get you going. There is no one milk chocolate recipe. There's as many recipes as there are people. And so you suit it to your taste. And I've actually picked the ratio of the ingredients for simplicity, because that's the point. Get you going, get you comfortable. And then you can do what you want. So on this one, we're going to use equal portions of all the ingredients. Makes it really simple. I personally work in metric, and so we're going to make, this is weighed out for a kilogram of chocolate. And so it's really simple. 250 grams of cocoa beans, 250 grams of cocoa butter, 250 grams of sugar, and you know where this is going, 250 grams of milk powder. Let's make a couple points real quick. No water in your chocolate. No liquid milk in your chocolate. You've got it, any chocolate that you're going to take and temper, you've got to use all dry ingredients. So you need a milk powder. It's a spray dried milk powder. This particular one where I get it from is specifically made to make milk chocolate out of. Works really nice. It's a full fat milk powder. Some people generally find, or can only seem to find, non-fat milk powder. This recipe will work just fine for that. May not be quite as creamy. And depending, and we'll talk about that in a moment, you may need to add a little bit of extra cocoa butter. That said, let's talk a couple numbers and about when you start deviating this, because I want you to deviate. Cocoa nibs range from, they've got cocoa butter in them. It's where it comes from. They have anywhere from, on a pretty low end of 45% cocoa butter on up to an average of 55% cocoa butter. For the math, and given all the other variables that go into making chocolate, I call it 50% cocoa butter. So there's 50% fat in this. Again, to get you going for the simplicity, we add another 25%. Here's the rationale of why I do that. And just follow me with the numbers here. We've got 25%. Half of this 25% is 12.5%. We're now at 25 plus 12.5. We're at 37.5% fat in this chocolate. My rule of thumb, if you're doing your own formulations, is you basically want about no less than 35% fat. If you start getting below that, there's just too many solids, and it won't flow in the melanger. It's gonna cake up, and it may not flow. There's as many exceptions to the rule as there is that rule per se. People have come back and told me, well, I'm down to 28% butter. What's wrong? Well, there's nothing wrong. It's a wide margin of error. So, but it's a rule of thumb. Just try to keep it 35 or above. If you want it at 45, add more cocoa butter. But it's just that minimum thing. So again, that's your basic ingredients for a milk chocolate. As far as what a lot of people want to add, or do they have to add, those kind of questions. There's two different ingredients that people tend to want to add or question about. One is lecithin. It's got two properties that we use it for. One is, as most people are aware of, it's an emulsifier. In this particular case, it reduces the viscosity, helps it flow a bit better. So if you're on the lower end, you say you want to drop your cocoa butter a little bit, or you have a bean that is on that 45% fat, you may be pushing a little low. A teaspoon of lecithin will help. Makes it a little more fluid, helps it flow a little bit better. Totally optional. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. Likewise, Vanilla beans. What I tend to do when I use them, if I want to use them, is I melt my cocoa butter, I split the beans down the center, I scrape them out with a sharp knife, and later on I'll show you how to do this. I then soak that in the warm cocoa butter for whatever's convenient, 15 minutes, half an hour, something like that, while I'm preheating my nibs, as I'm going to talk about in a moment, and my sugar and my milk powder. Then pull out the stems that are going to be left, leave the seeds in that you've scraped out, wipe them down, and there you go. Your warmed cocoa butter is going to go into your warm melanger. You're going to add your warm nibs. This stuff's all warm so it doesn't bog down. It doesn't have to put in extra energy to liquefy it. Once it's flowing well, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something on that order, half an hour, it's not really a time critical issue. You'll start alternating and putting in your sugar and your milk powder until it's all in. Same thing, just like the dark chocolate. 24 hours. This is your first batch. You're just getting your ground rules, getting your feel for this stuff. 24 hours, taste it. Taste it all the way along. Watch how it changes. It's a neat process. Watch how the grit changes. Watch how the flavor develops and melds and transforms. It's a neat process. So experience the whole thing, not just the end chocolate bar. Two other quick things just about milk chocolate. I mentioned, if you want to add the lecithin, I usually add it to my melted cocoa butter, my warmed melted cocoa butter at the same time as that. It goes in well. If you want to add it right to the melanger, again, no problem. And likewise, vanilla bean. Same exact rule as that milk powder. Probably on a monthly basis, I get the question, well, can't I use vanilla extract? No, it's got water in it. Not a lot, doesn't take a lot. You add water in any form, be it sweeteners, honey, agave syrup, any number of those. The solid particles in your chocolate, basically they make a mud, and what happens is a process called seizing, and your chocolate will turn into a thick fudge, and you're actually in the realm of potentially breaking your melanger. So don't do it. Use a vanilla bean, or just leave it out. Again, 2 optional ingredients. And actually I'd said 2 items, this is a 3rd item. The industry standard, this is just to talk about what we're making here. This seems to be what people like to make, I've found. And this would be considered a quote-unquote dark milk chocolate. The industry standard sets, I believe, the lower limit on the amount of cocoa that has to be in a milk chocolate at 10%. So for 1 pound of nibs, you could make 10 pounds of milk chocolate. Makes for a very light milk chocolate. And if I'm remembering, they actually cap it at 25. So there we go, we're bucking industry. Like that's going to worry us. Because we're at 25%. I've often brought that up a little higher, but again, you have to start balancing what flavors you want. And you start getting this cocoa too high, then you either have to drop your sugar or you have to drop your milk powder just to maintain the balance of that. Again, 35 minimum % fat. But those are down the road. Those are just things to keep in mind. But for this first one, keep it easy. Quarter, 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 quarter. Equal portions. Leave these out. Don't worry about them right now. See what you think of the basics. Put it in, 24 hours. Taste it along the way. Enjoy the process. And that's about it. Let's go see how to actually put this in the melanger. Thanks. All right, so I've got all our ingredients put together for milk chocolate. I have our cocoa butter heating, 250 grams. I have the milk powder warming on the top of the oven. It was just nice and convenient. Also 250 grams and 250 grams of sugar. And the nibs are in the oven also, just pre-warming a little bit. This should go together actually pretty quickly because we've got such a high proportion of cocoa butter compared to the dark chocolate. So it's going to go into this little melanger. This one's from Premier. I don't currently carry it, but you can get one if you like it from Indie Chocolate. Do the Google thing, you'll find them. It's a great little melanger. It doesn't hold the same capacity, but it's also a fraction of the price. And it's a good startup unit. So go for it if you want. All right. There that's going. And in the cocoa butter goes. And actually, before I put it all in, I want to make a comment that I actually heat this up pretty hot. That's a little over 300 degrees. And it's in no danger of burning. Cocoa butter has a very high flash point, high burn point. It's well over 400 before it starts smoking. But it gives this, a little extra warmth and oomph. And we're probably going to be able to get a large proportion, if not all of this in one trial, as opposed to having to, baby it, for lack of a better term, on the dark chocolates if you aren't making a liquor beforehand, if you're just putting the nibs straight in. So anyway, in it goes. And we're going to get, here we go. And again, this is milk chocolate. It doesn't take a whole lot of chocolate to go into milk chocolate. 25% here, which is going to be a dark milk chocolate. Okay, and we're going to give that just a couple seconds to work its way in. Okay. All right, we're going to add the rest of the nibs. And with that case, we're actually still very fluid with all that cocoa butter, so we can go ahead and start adding our sugar and our milk powder. Again, nice and easy, take it slow. And it looks like this should all go in nice and easily. Yep, there we go. All right. And our milk powder. And again, if you like milk powder, milk chocolate, and want to start here, this actually makes it for pretty easy going. Is to start with a milk chocolate that's got a higher fat content. Lets you get it a lot more of it done in one set of additions. As you're seeing, this is pretty much all going in. I'm looking at it. It's getting a little thick. I may not get all this in. We may have to wait for 5 minutes to get the rest in. But let's see. Yeah. And I'm specifically looking in here and watching it incorporate as it runs. We're definitely thickening up. We're going to go ahead and hold it there for just a couple minutes. Let that start actually flowing better and not be quite so chunky. All right, so it's smoothed out a good bit. I can add this last little bit of milk powder. Go ahead and get that in there. Still, don't just drop it in, get it a little at a time. And you're gonna watch it, come around and fold around and work its way in. Again, like a cake batter. Nothing you haven't seen before probably. All right, milk powder's in. To finish up, it is the same as we did on the dark chocolate. I'm going to recommend you leave this for 24 hours. Leave the lid off for 3 hours. You want to let some of these volatiles and aromatics that are pretty unpleasant. I can smell them here, and they're pretty aggressive even with only 25% chocolate in here. You want to let those off. Milk powder has volatiles also, as a matter of fact, so you want those to come off. And it's just a reminder, all of these ingredients actually have some residual water in them. And so you need to let that vapor come off, the water vapor, because it feels kind of contradictory. But if you don't do that, you've got a chance of it condensing on this lid. And then even though it was in the chocolate to begin with, it can drip back in, and I've seen it seize. It locks up, and you can end up hurting these and damaging the equipment because the chocolate ends up being stronger than the motors and the gears. Not a good situation. So leave it off for 3 hours, put it on, come back in, 21 hours after that, total of 24 hours, and you're gonna have milk chocolate. You can then temper it, do what you want with it. Also, taste it along the way. It's certainly milk chocolate. It's totally gritty at the moment. But it already, this isn't your mother's or your grandmother's milk chocolate. This is milk chocolate you've made. But with really good ingredients, it's gonna have actually a lot more flavor than you may be used to. Finally, on one thing I think about with milk chocolates, bean choice. The acids in milk and the acids in some of your brighter beans go really well in a milk chocolate. There's a bunch of chemistry that goes on that give you some really rich flavors. So even if you don't normally like a bright fruity chocolate, they can go well with a milk chocolate that surprises you. I'm not a big bright fruity fan for my chocolates. I like the deep brooding ones. But Madagascar, the new Chivite, they're both really bright. I'm not the hugest of fan of them as dark chocolate. I like them as milk chocolates. So, spread your horizons a little bit after the first batch. That's about it. We'll be back to have a look at tempering these in about 24 hours. Thanks a lot.